You guys just can't leave me alone, can you? Bionicle: The Legend of Madanui was a PC game intended for release in 2001, but was cancelled at the last minute and remained elusive until the most recent development build was released in 2018. I reviewed it last year and it's like the Bionicle fans' equivalent of finding one of those old lost horror movies and it turning out to be 2011's The Thing. Unenthusiastic. But I thought I was done. I thought that was the thing that would cap off my look at every single Bionicle game, and I really thought nothing else would come from it. But then, Lightstone Studios, the development team behind the initial round of patches for compatibility, decided to release Bionicle: The Legend of Madanui Rebuilt, a complete overhaul intended to bring the beta up to a more finished level of standards. Which means the paradigm has completely changed, and I have to come back here. But this is just going to be a short update, so for context, the original video is right up there in the card.
Let's just get the most obvious thing out of the way. The game does feel a lot more finished now. There's more cutscenes with a few FMVs that only occasionally break. The side quests now give out health and mask power extensions instead of just random pickups. There's now more music when clearing the Koros of Rahi, and it can get pretty damn rocking. The random coins are now used to open doors. Even a few of the sections I had a bitch of a time with originally didn't provide the same hassle, but I've got no way to tell if that's a legitimate improvement or if I just got lucky this time. Now that there's no incomplete features to get in the way of my perception, I can better judge the actual product on its own merits. And I'm sorry, but I still don't think very highly of it. It's more of a game now, it's interesting to look at. I'm sure any young Bionicle fans at the time would have eaten it up had it released, but I consider the core design to be too heavily flawed to call it a good game. Let me explain. As I already said, each hub has a few side quests, though they're all fetch quests. Find an item in the stage, bring it back, get a reward, it's always the same story. The thing is, the levels aren't built with the Koro as a central hub, they're more like a linear level with the Koro at the start, so if I find an item later on, why would I walk all the way back just to complete the quest and then return to where I was to continue onwards? Or if the item is close to the start, it's on a tiny offshoot from the main path that serves no purpose other than to house an item. It's not built like a collectathon, but it's pretending it is one. Then there's the masks. There's so many masks with all the correct powers, but by endgame, none of them have any use. Things like speed and levitation are universal, but when there's literally no water past Golly's stage, the mask of water breathing just takes up space. One more press of a button to skip past to get to something useful. It's the same problem I have with Mega Man ZX Advent actually. A lot of unique powers, but very little occasion to ever use them. So here's what I'm thinking would have worked better. A more puzzle-oriented game based around a central hub in each stage, using mask powers and elemental powers to collect items for side quests and coins to open more doors to explore further. Almost like each level would be a mini Banjo-Kazooie game, where the worlds in Banjo would instead be different parts of each section of the island. Like, using Onuwahi as my explanation, expand the beach, the mines, the mountains, and make them all open fields directly connected to the Koro for easy return. In either case, I have better ideas for Bionicle games, and I'm willing to sell them, but don't let that distract from the inherent issues present that aren't simply missed potential. If the levels aren't just one long linear path, they're claustrophobic mazes with no sense of direction and no map. The controls are loose, platforms are difficult to land on, and enemies are small targets with numerous invincibility frames and a tendency to swarm a tower's feet and stunlock them to death. Plus, maybe it's just me, but I find the game to be very bland. Let me go into some specifics to show what I'm talking about. A newest stage, in its early attempts to justify mask usage, has several walls to dig through. One of them hides a switch that reveals the path forward on a dark wall. It also has these collapsing platforms that are difficult to cross fast enough, but they can be kept aloft by using the Mask of Concealment. Because, as we all know, being invisible lowers body weight. And that's far from the end of it. Pohatu's stage, aside from the drawn-out riding sequence, turns into a maze that somehow loops back towards the beginning for no reason. Liwa's stage is just filled with small platforms and tight jumps with vine swinging that doesn't feel right. And Takoro's Rahi spawners take dozens upon dozens of shots to destroy, and even once they're all taken out, Vakama just keeps saying to talk to the Matoran, even though I'm pretty damn sure I've talked to them all by now. Listen, I'm all for the game being released to the public in the interest of preservation, and if I'm being fair, it's the better 2001 Bionicle game than the GBA game. But for such a white whale that eluded us for so long, it's a historical curiosity and little more. If you're not a hardcore Bionicle fan, I wouldn't even think about it. Plus, I hate having to throw Lightstone under the bus for this, but for a hyped up, rebuilt release that promised to turn this into a finished game, why is it still so damn buggy? I ran into so many bugs in the original release of the game, and the only ones I couldn't recreate were crashing on the collapsing platforms and the ruined gravity in Pohatu's Rahi ride. Die in the final stage? Crash. Attempt to return to the previous room? Crash. Try to tech the inventory? Crash. Use the grappling hook underwater? Crash. Shoot this guy here? Crash. It's really just as bad as I said last time.
And that's why if Rebuilt gets patched to fully fix it, I'm still not going through the effort to review it again because my opinion still hasn't changed and I still don't think this game is good. Being complete isn't going to change that. Now, am I finally done? Or is there one more hanging thread from last time that I need to complete? Let's finish this.
Let's take this from the top one more time. 2003's Bionicle the Game was originally slated to have a sequel the following year titled City of Legends, and it was cancelled because Bionicle the Game sucked. In fact, it was barely in development. As far as we're aware, a one-room movement test was all that was built, and we didn't even know about that until it was found on an Xbox development kit. I only talked about the demonstration video available last year because I don't own an original Xbox to mod and put it onto, and the state of Xbox emulation is still extremely unfinished. Well, in the time since, a matching PS2 build of the movement test has been found and dumped, and I just happened to have downloaded a PS2 emulator recently for some unrelated JoJo ventures. I could have made a video just on the work I did getting this damn emulator to run. It's got these red vertical lines that research suggests can be fixed with changing to OpenGL rendering, but none of the rendering options fix the problem. Trying to map my Wii Classic controller continuously led to it registering plus and minus as keyboard presses, except for the first time when it didn't, while also mapping A to B both circle and start simultaneously without being mapped as such. The libUSB plugin that would allow me to use my DualShock wouldn't install, so the vertical lines stay and I'm playing with a keyboard because there's just no fixing any of this.
And people wonder why I prefer console gaming to PC gaming.
While this time it really is difficult to judge the game in this very early state, I think there is some potential here. We know Argonaut is capable of good platformers, so I see this as having the chance to eventually develop into something at least somewhat worthwhile. I admit I'm just a sucker for these Prince of Persia kinds of games, but there's glimmers of some very smooth automatic movement and enough advanced platforming options for a cool level design. It's not perfect, however. The combat is extremely slow and easy to whiff blows, throwing discs doesn't seem to help much, jumping from a standstill for however often you'd be doing that is insanely laggy, and wall running doesn't always activate correctly. Of course, a lot of these flaws could have been ironed out had development continued, though the general quality of Bionicle the game leaves reason to doubt the final product would have been spectacular. I stand by my previous assertion that comparing two 2004 games, while it would have been less complex, City of Legends probably would have ended up better than Prince of Persia Warrior Within. It'd be hard to end up worse.
Now, do you think 13 Bionicle videos is enough? Not that I didn't have some sort of idea what I was getting into when I started this close to 4 years ago, but it's just so much. I spent close to 4 years playing every single Bionicle game, and frankly, most of them were either lackluster or outright bad. The ones I can recommend, I could count on one hand. I think it's more than time to move on to something else. And I'd like to tease it, but the next game I have in mind to review isn't out yet, so I'm scared that it'll come out and I won't have any material to work with, and any foreshadowing I do here would be for nothing. If it does work out, it won't be too long.